United States, the epicenter of economic innovation and growth, has lately been the undisputed world chief in finance. The management role may, however, see a swift trade soon, given the tectonic shifts being witnessed in latest years lead through India's revolutionary unified payment interface UPI. It is a stupendous success story which is revolutionizing the payment. The world is starting at India's UPI with admiration and curiosity. UPI is a real-time charge machine that has converted how Indians make payments, permitting them to, without problems, switch cash from one financial institution account to another. UPI has been a sport charger for the subcontinent, as it has enabled digital monetary inclusion and decreased the reliance on cash. UPI has additionally attracted the interest of world tech giant like Google, which has launched its very own UPI based app Google Pay in India. According to Forbes, UPI has been a decisive element in India's embody of cashless payments thanks to its ease of use and interoperability. The article additionally explores the practicable of UPI to go global in the remittances market. The place India is the world's pinnacle recipient. UPI should each speed up and decrease the price of cross-border transactions to and from India. If it can work out agreements with the nations from which Indian diaspora ship the most cash home. ETBFSI additionally praises UPI as a fintech success story that has put India some distance beforehand in the world. The article notes that many international locations are nonetheless the usage of ordinary strategies like card repayments and checks, whilst Indians can switch cash with QR scan codes and a number methods. The article additionally highlights how Google has benefited from launching Google Pay in India, as it has witnessed a speedy increase in customers and transactions. Times of India calls UPI India's story of an economic revolution and describes how it has collected 260 million customers in a populace of 1.4 billion in roughly 7 years, considering the fact that its launch. The article additionally mentions some of the challenges that UPI faces, such as security, privacy, and regulation. Newsroom Post additionally lauds UPI as a tremendously superior price gadget that has revolutionized the way humans transact in India. The article states that one of the key elements that units UPI aside from different price strategies is its scale, as it can deal with hundreds of thousands of transactions per day. The article additionally discusses how UPI can be built in with different structures and services such as e-commerce, social media, and authorities schemes. As you can see, the world opinion on UPI of India is mainly nice and impressed via its innovation and impact. UPI is considered as a mannequin for different nations to emulate and collaborate with. The world is taking word, and over 30 nations have expressed past time in adopting UPI, a resounding acknowledgement of the modern idea which has limitless workable on a world scale. In contrast, most developed international locations proceed to be counted on incredibly inefficient card system. UPI have an effect lies no longer solely in reinventing the payments infrastructure. However, additionally, in optimizing the behavior of banks and different contributors in the ecosystem, ensuing in financial growth. UPIs have an effect lies no longer solely in reinventing the payments infrastructure. However, additionally, in optimizing the behavior of banks and different contributors in the ecosystem, ensuing in financial growth. Faster and greater handy transactions allow human beings to purchase and promote extra items and offerings in a shorter period, supporting the boom of the economy. Instant transactions assist in consummating nearby commerce and growing and enabling new marketplaces, a ought to for any economy. What makes UPI even greater brilliant is its huge success in bringing competing gamers like banks, wallets, etc. onto the identical platform with the promise of growing large market and decreasing the price of transactions to nearly zero. On the world landscape, no different USA has managed to accomplish as plenty as India has executed with UPI. This begs the question, why is the relaxation of the world lagging, especially the US, the world chief in finance? We, in contrast, India's instantaneous price peaks, UPI with the US nearest peaks, FedNow and present card systems. The FedNow gadget, created via and routed through the Federal Reserve, works like the real-time gross agreement RTGS gadget in India and is appreciably distinct from the UPI, which routes itself through a separate non-profit body, the National Payments Corporation of India, NPCI. However, it is the closest the US has come to reaching on the spot far of transactions. The disparities between UPI and FedNow illustrate the backwardness of the US machine. as in contrast to India. According to the Federal Reserve, FedNow is an instantaneous repayments RTGS. It includes out transactions between the senders and receivers banks immediately by means of mechanically crediting and debiting the transaction quantity on the federal ledger, therefore making the transactions method quicker and safer. To illustrate, suppose a sender sends an immediately price request to their bank. The financial institution then sends the request throughout to the FedNow gadget, which validates the message to make sure all specs are met and forwards it to the receiver's bank. The receiver's financial institution then confirms or denies the important points of the transaction, primarily based on which the transaction goes through and is then credited or debited from the bank's master accounts through FedNow. While FedNow is nevertheless in its nascent stages, the universal mode of immediate repayment in the US have been deposit and debit cards, with an overwhelming majority of Americans proudly owning credit and debit cards and preferring them over different modes of fee such as cash for nearly all transactions. The American payment ecosystem card networks are overpoweringly influential and capable to cost extraordinarily excessive transaction fees, except any possible choice for consumers. It should be argued that this oligopoly of card networks is preventing the increase of no longer simply the fee structures in the US, however, additionally hampering monetary boom and innovation. UPI is India's strategy to on-the-spot, far-away transactions. Essentially, UPI is an open-source API, application programming interface, that can be accessed via any cell phone application. It connects banks, merchants, and shoppers to make certain seamless and instantaneous far-away transactions. UPI's capability to be accessible to all events of the transaction comes from its sketch as digital public infrastructure. As digital public infrastructure, UPI is open access for the smallest merchants, service vendors, and facilitators. One of the most groundbreaking aspects of UPI is its accessibility for the consumers. One can get right of entry to all financial institution money owed on any compliant sale app. It solely requires the information of the different parties' UPI ID in the structure of their sale-wide variety or a QR code that can be scanned on the spot. Contrary to this, FedNow does not contacting with the consumer, thereby limiting consumers' get entry to FedNow to simply financial institution portals. This capability that the client desires to signal into their financial institution account via the bank portal and then supply small print of the receiver's bank account. As for the card system, they require an external gadget on the merchant side, and every card can only get right of entry to one financial institution account. Card can only facilitate a consumer to merchant transaction and can't remit funds between consumers. Whereas UPI requires a purchaser to have a cellular phone, cellular quantity, or a QR code to make the payment via a cell phone utility instantly. On the other hand, FedNow requires customers to log into their bank account through the financial institution portal and procedure receiver financial institution important points to then make the transaction. FedNow is consequently neither pleasant nor a convenient alternative for in-person transactions, limiting its utility in evaluation to UPI. Another benefit that UPI possesses over FedNow is seen in the transaction fee. UPI famously has no transaction expenses and a zero MDR, merchant discount rate policy. This helps reduce transaction costs. On the different hand, FedNow encourages banks to accumulate extra transaction fees. This implies a large income margin for banks at the value of consumers. To incentivize banks to take part in the FedNow framework and impenetrable their activity above the activity of the consumers. Whereas UPI's elimination of transaction charges is an indicator of its consumer-centric approach. Cards are luxurious for consumers with savings card businesses charging as an awful lot of 3.5% processing charges per transaction with no rate rules imposed on them by means of the government. This is reflective of the large diploma of UPI has disrupted the present status quo of the repayments enterprise in favor of shoppers and the financial system and perform the function of the public properly. With the aid of putting off transaction fees, having a zero MDR coverage, and diluting the manipulate of financial institution portal over transactions. This has triggered the share of savings and debit card companies manage over transaction system to reduce in India, supplying a low-cost, handy choice to the customer and opening the house for different fintech innovations. The largest disadvantage of FedNow and the card community with admire to UPI is the lack of interoperability. Interoperability can be described as the capability of disparate structures to talk with every other with the motive of sharing records and transactions seamlessly and cost effectively. This requires cooperation between all the dealers of the transaction. The RBI has been capable to convey collectively many non-public retailers to the equal framework and streamline communication. Then, in conclusion, I can say that changes are inevitable, and it is time the US adopts consumer-centric options like UPI to preserve its hegemony. And I should expect and I should dream that this advantageous UPI system would be accepted by the major economies of the world, and India's UPI would be a very good tool for international transaction. Thank you very much.